And that's because chin and jawline, yes, you can shave and affect them, but remember, just as this clavicle here is a structurally important part of the human body, because this thing is like a clothes hanger that the ribs are hanging on and that the shoulder sockets, the shoulder ball and socket joints are hanging on. So you're not going to be trying and smash that. And then what you end up with is somebody who's disabled because you're not able to fix it back because you're trying to angle for that V. So they tend to leave that and disguise it with clothing and draping of fashion. Remember, in the Beautiful Man series, God was speaking and just beginning to touch on how important fashion is in terms of hiding the men among us. Women, a lot of the things that we have been taught to think is chic and avant-garde and very bold is just hiding the male skeleton in our midst. That's all it is. It's hiding their bone structure. It's hiding their height. It's hiding their massive boat-shaped hands and feet. When compared to us, all of the things that have been dictated to females is just about hiding the men in our midst. So I was trying to get a better look because I was thinking, I swear, I see a shadow on this girl's face. And then I would look again, trying to look without being rude, and there would be nothing there. So anyway, there was that. I just gave up on looking eventually, and I enjoyed her company until she reached her stop and she got off the train. And when she got up, obviously the person is getting up, so they're standing right in front of you, and she's moving forward. Others are moving forward. And so she reaches out and she puts one hand on the train rail, and I thought, what a big hand. Exactly like Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, grandmother, what a big mouth you have. What pointy ears you have. You're sitting there describing the wolf with all the wolf's parts and then still calling it grandmother. That's what I thought. What a big hand. And then I looked at the other hand by her side, and it was so big and long, something that I hadn't noticed while she was gesturing and talking and we were on the train. But at the same time, this girl's hand was so delicate. It was such a delicate hand, so slender, with the tapered fingertips of females. And she's standing there holding the train and waiting for a chance to get off. And my eyes, after dipping down to the other hand, my eyes were just glued on that big hand that girl had. The same way that I'd been staring at her chin and the lower half of her face anytime she wasn't looking. She turned back and then she waved to me briefly and then she left. And when she left, there was a white guy who had been sitting on the other side of her. Didn't notice the guy because she just came and sat between us. But when she left, there was a white guy with long hair, kind of like these guys who like to play guitar. That was his look. Very laid back, very relaxed guy who had been sitting on the other side, and he had been quiet. And then he simply said conversationally, not even looking at me, he simply conversationally said, MTF. And in the dream, when he said NTF, it was almost like these anime cartoons. It didn't come exactly out of his mouth, but it just materialized in the air in thick black letters, MTF. And then it went away. And I said, pardon me? Did you say something? And he shrugged and he looked at me and he said, oh, sorry. Sometimes I mumble. I said MTF. And then I asked him, what's that? And he gave me this look like, you live in New York City. Are you kidding me right now? But when he saw me genuinely looking back, waiting for him to answer, then he said, MTF, that person, that girl, if you want to call it that, she's MTF, male to female. Didn't you notice? That's a man. And when I tell you that the air got stuck in my throat, I widened my eyes to the biggest that it possibly could, and I tilted my head, which is a natural reaction when you're trying to show someone, I automatically do not believe you, but this is polite conversation, so I cannot call you, a stranger, a liar. But I tilted my head and I was like, and then he looked at my reaction, he laughed a little bit and he shook his head like, yeah, another one bites the dust. And he said, a man, that is a man, a male member of the species. My brother, your boyfriend, a man. That was a man. And then I said, no, that can't be. That can't be. You're wrong. That's a woman. Did you see her skin? Did you see her body? There's no way that could ever be a man. I mean, the movement, the way she carried herself, her conversation, that was 100% a woman. And then I even added more coals to the fire. And I said, believe me, I know what a transgender looks like, even a good one. And that was not one of them. And this man stared at me a good long moment, as in he turned his body to actually look at me. And when he next answered, All traces of lighthearted humor and even pleasantness was gone out of his tone. He was extremely firm and extremely serious and even seemed a little offended. And he said, "That's a man, a born male." He was born male, and you can always tell by the jaw and the chin structure, which they can't seem to get right yet. Yeah, everything looks good. Yeah, everything looks like it's where it should be. Breasts, hips, all of that. But look at the chin and the jawline. It gives it away. That's a man and will always be a man no matter what they do to him. Plasma, lasers, those can only do so much, even though I must admit, they're getting better at it. That's one of the best ones I've seen yet. But he is still a man. And then this man kind of snapped back into his own world after giving me a very long look directly in my stunned face after he finished saying what he said. He was not even bothering to see if I would believe him or not. He simply turned his body back. He rested his hands on one thigh. He lifted up the other leg and put it on his knee, a very distinctive way that men sit. He pulled the leg up, crossed it at the ankle, and then he just went back to his own thoughts. He wasn't even bothering to see if I was with him, if I believed him or not. And so you see this man talking about things that we're not using now. He says plasma, he says lasers. I don't know of those things being used in transgendering, even those from the womb. In the old days, in the days of Barbara Bush and friends, okay, in the days when all the presidents were marrying men in this country and traipsing them into the White House, they used to disguise by high collars for the Adam's apple, and they didn't have any drugs to disguise the voice, so the men would actually have to affect. And if you want to know how men affect female voices, all you have to do is watch any old Robin Williams movie in which he's typically going silly, or watch Mrs. Doubtfire. That is a perfect example of how you hide an old style 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 13 and 1100s. These people were transing themselves. That's how you hide an old style transgender. They have to affect a false high female voice. They have to wear the high collars and they have to disguise with prosthetics, false breasts, and things like that. Don't think that the master artisans of the day who were creating believable and beautiful female characters, for instance, for Shakespeare's plays and things like that, don't think that those men didn't know how to work with fabric and work with rubber in order to give a presentable and believable female silhouette. The problem comes in with the advent of cameras, the advent of color, the advent of media. More eyes are looking, more suspicion can be raised. And also with an increase in medical knowledge, with an increase in prosthetic usage and making, this is how the transgendered of, I would say, the medium periods, the Barbara Bushes and them, now coming into the Nancy Reagans and them, the Jackie O's and them, this is how they were disguising themselves, because now surgery could come in and shave in that Adam's apple. Clavicles can be broken and repositioned, but even most of them, this thing is part of holding up the skeletal structure, and it's very dangerous to try and break it, which is why you can always spot all the fake supermodels, all the Victoria's Secret models. You can see that they're men because they have a straight T-bar across here, whereas the female clavicle tends to come into a V. And so this man is talking about things that we don't talk about now when it comes to transgenders. He's talking about plasma and lasers, he says. And he sounds like someone who knew in society that this was happening, because he says, yeah, this is one of the best ones that I've seen yet, he says. But for some reason, he says, they can't get the chin and the jawline right.